Hello, everyone out there in Facebook land. Thank you for joining us today on this in our virtual clubhouse, really. I'm Melissa Budzinski and I work at Gilda's Club. And today I'm joined by Sheila Carroll, that's with 2 R's and 2 L's, all the way from Mount Pleasant. So we're so happy to have you with us today, Sheila. And I just want to let you know what we're going to talk about today is narrative medicine, telling your story, why it's important to tell your story, making sense of cancer by doing that. And we invite all of you to let us know that you're listening by making comments in the comment section or just saying hello. If you have questions, please log them there. We won't necessarily be able to get to them during the presentation, but afterward, we certainly will be able to answer those questions. If you like this video, please share it with your friends and family on Facebook. We'd love to reach as many people as possible. So I think with that, we're going to get started. So Sheila comes to us, like I said, from Mount Pleasant, Michigan. And I love that this virtual world can bring us together like this.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, literally, we just click onto our computer and here we are. It's so great. And you are a narrative therapist that you've done some studying of narrative medicine at Columbia University. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's great. And you can learn more about her. We have posted there on this post her website address and her Facebook address. And so you can click onto that, SheilaCarroll.com, and get to know her a little better. But we're going to talk a little bit about making sense of your cancer journey by telling your story. Is that correct?
Yes.
Great. So why don't we start by just, what is narrative medicine? What's narrative therapy?
Those are two great questions and they overlap, but they are separate answers. So narrative medicine is a relatively new term that was begun probably about 20 years ago, and in which people in the healing professions across the board, so nurses, doctors, caregivers in nursing homes and so on, began to look at, could they improve the outcomes of the treatment that people were receiving by doing a better job of understanding the context that the patient comes to them with, and the making them feel listened to. I know, Melissa, everybody who's hearing this has had the experience of going into a doctor's office and, you know, he's in and out, or she, in 10 or 15 minutes. And you just end up, you never get to ask your questions, or you don't feel confident to do it. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely. I would agree. Or you become distracted with one thing, and and you really have something maybe you want to say and it's not coming out. And so, it doesn't get addressed.
So with narrative medicine, the goal here is to know what to look for. And one of the things they teach you that has been so invaluable in my work is something called deep listening. Now, it's deep listening in the sense of you're talking to the patient and you're listening to what they're saying, but you are listening in a different way, rather than, as we all often do, someone's telling you, well, you know, I feel this ache here, and you start forming judgments in your head right away. I mean, if it's a doctor or a nurse, that's what you're hired for, is to assess and diagnose. Those are all things. But if you do that too quickly and you miss important information, it can totally change the outcome of the care that you're giving. So that's what the goal of narrative medicine is to improve the outcomes. And let me give you an example just to make it a little clearer. Sure. So one of the great stories that I read early on when I was studying was that a woman came in who was an elderly woman, and she had several health complaints that were pretty serious, not life-threatening, but serious. And the doctor was addressing those, he then took a workshop in narrative medicine, and the same woman came back, and he knew enough at this point to ask her, tell me a little bit about your life. So he learns from asking her about her life that she has zero support. She lives alone. So any outcomes from anything, any treatment, just her getting to treatment was a challenge.
Yeah.
And so him asking a simple question like that changed her outcome, because he was able to make sure that she got the support that she needed. So that's a simple example.
Oh, that's really great. And it sounds like she really felt heard
She
by
did.
him and seen as a full person with a full life rather than just this specific person with cancer, right?
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
you're not just your diagnosis.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So how can this kind of therapy or medicine help people with cancer or their caregivers?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, first of all, there are 3 stories that potentially every person with cancer or a caregiver will have. And the one is the diagnosis. That's the first story.
Mm.
And we all can tell the stories of, there I was sitting in the doctor's office, and the doctor came in and delivered this life-threatening diagnosis. And all of that, all the person's life just blows up, right?
Right.
And the caregiver's life blows up. So that's one story. The next story usually follows, in which the person with the diagnosis of cancer is now seeking every bit of information they can gain.
Mm.
They are, if they're like me, they're online researching, they're talking to people who have had a similar diagnosis, what happened with them. So gathering information as much as possible. So sound familiar so far?
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes we even find that the person with the diagnosis doesn't want to do that, but the caregiver is the one online looking things up and keeping track of that kind of all that information. Yeah.
Yes. So the third story is often not addressed, and that is called the quest or the journey, in which the individual now has to embrace this new reality in their life and find out what it means. And that is a journey that doesn't just happen in a couple weeks. It's a longer journey and what it means. But in my life, I have a beloved nephew who has 4th stage lung cancer. And my husband has a cousin who, he's an only child, his cousin is an only child, and they were raised kind of like brothers. And he has 4th stage I've lost the one, prostate cancer.
Okay.
And so both of them are in very, very serious states of being, right? With a diagnosis
Sure.
like that.
Mhm. Right.
So how do you help someone at that stage in the journey to find meaning? Well, I went to my nephew that I mentioned, and I told him I was going to be talking with you. And I said, what do you want me to say? And he said, ask them 2 questions. What do they want to live for? And why?
Oh, beautiful.
So if you can answer those 2 questions, and by the way, his answer was, I want to live for my wife because I'm not near done loving her.
What an answer.
I went, oh my gosh, I got quite emotional. So you need to, so those are questions. What do you want to live for? Well,
Yeah.
in the answer to that question is your meaning. And once you begin to address that and look at some of the other hurdles in your life that you've overcome, and what are the lessons that you've learned from that, and how can you apply them today? That's all part of your story. That's all part of the journey and learning how to not feel like you're your diagnosis, but that you have some control over what's going on and your perception of what's going on.
Okay. So in that way, this is how the medicine works. The medicine of story works for people.
Yes.
Is it helps give them meaning and a context to their experience. Is that right?
I would even change a word instead of give meaning, find meaning.
Oh, so they start to become aware of this that's already is, right?
It already is in them. They're so, most of us would be so overwhelmed by this information and then the visits to the doctors or the chemo or the surgeries. But there is something behind and above that, and that is, what does it mean?
Oh, that's beautiful. And so why is that so powerful, that process of finding meaning, finding context to our experience, coming to be aware of that? Why is that so powerful for us?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. We are a meaning-making people. There's one author who says we are story animals. I'm not exactly sure what he means by that, but he means it in the sense that it's in our biology.
Yeah.
That we tell stories. Now, some of those stories do not serve us. And that's part of the work I do as a therapist is, what stories are you telling that don't any longer serve you? Or are you stuck in your story? So those are questions, but we are all seeking meaning. The other thing that stories give us are blueprints. So for example, when I gave I said somebody gets a diagnosis, they start talking to people who have been through the same thing. They're looking for a blueprint. And it's that, somebody who did this and it worked. And so it helps you move through from fear and startle and overwhelm into understanding, action, and meaning. So that's what the story does for us. Even in the more generally speaking, and not talking about cancer, but just in life, we seek meaning. Why am I here? And that would be something that kind of goes back to the question I suggested from my nephew. What do you want to live for? Well, have I done what I came here for? Is another way to ask that question.
Sure.
And it is never too late. Never too late. I love to tell the story of a woman I knew years ago who was the angriest, bitterest woman I ever knew. Just being around her she was toxic. She was the grandmother of a friend of mine. And she had a stroke and went into the hospital and had some kind of an experience in the hospital that utterly transformed her. And the whole family was healed because grandma was healed. And then grandma died not long after.
Wow.
It's never too late.
Yeah, that was quite a gift she gave to her family.
It
was this change of story, right? This change of narrative. Right. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Because just to restate it, before her narrative was life is awful, everyone's bad to me and mean to me, and nothing ever works out the way I want it to.
Yeah.
The new story was, I am so blessed to have my family. I love you all. I can't wait to see you again. That's a very different narrative.
It is. That's a big shift. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, what a neat story. And it's two things I'm thinking. And I'm thinking about people that are newly diagnosed, and how narrative storytelling or how this process could help them, and in what way they could use it. And the second thing I was thinking is that so far from what I'm getting from what you're saying is that it also instills hope.
Yes.
Hope for the future, like something to reach for.
Yes.
So I may have answered my own question there. I don't know.
You did very well.
Sorry about that.
Well, if a person is newly diagnosed and they've never really thought about their story or their life, now some people that's not the case, but oftentimes, and the shock of this. Now, I have not ever had cancer, but I have had terrible shocks in my life, and this, like, if you think about being in a car accident and then afterwards the trauma recovery from it,
Yeah.
it is a traumatic experience being told you have cancer.
Yes.
And you can replay in detail exactly everything that was said, done, the colors, everything. So that's a traumatic event. What happens next is you have to grieve.
Hmm.
Now, the instinct is, okay, let's get the best doctor, let's get this done. All of that's necessary, but you also, there's this other piece. And a caregiver, if they are aware of this, can help. Even just my saying it to the people that are listening, you need to let yourself grieve. Grieve the before. Not so much that it doesn't enable you to make decisions, because you're going to have to make them, whether you want to or not. But but to realize that you are going to grieve, but you got a story. You got a story. And what's the end? We don't know. Let's find out. Let's find some better narratives here that I can listen to and learn from. So are there any books that you know of, Melissa, that have great cancer stories, people who have survived cancer?
Sure. You mean like personal narrative stories?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, actually, what I was thinking while you were saying this is I was wondering if people who write blogs while they're on their cancer journey, either video blogs or actual written blogs, do better emotionally on there, because they're telling their story. They're giving themselves context. And so those are the things I thought of. I'm not sure I've ever, right in my mind right now, I can't think of a book that has that, but blogs for sure.
Yeah, I just, the one that I think about was out years and years ago, Love, Medicine, and Miracles by Bernie Siegel.
Sure.
So that would be one. But this idea of, looking for people whose blogs are talking about their journey, we need blueprints. You've never been here before.
Yeah.
So whether you're a caregiver or the person with the diagnosis, you've never been here before. So you need narratives that help you with that, not the other kind.
Yeah. So, I'm thinking specifically right now of the caregiver, and often all the focus goes to the person who has the diagnosis. How can this type of therapy, medicine, help a caregiver? Because their story might be slightly different, right?
Yeah.
Even though it's the same experience.
Yeah. Well, I think about my sister-in-law, Bobby. My brother died 5 years ago from cancer, and she kept a journal.
Mm.
Now, because she's a bit OCD about details, right?
Yeah.
She was writing down what the doctors were saying, what the current medication was, whatever. But she then began to write down her thoughts. She has strong faith. And so she was writing down scriptures that she could remember. And so she tells me that she now gets that journal out many times in a several month period to not to relive the hard part of it, but to be comforted by the journey that she can see herself going through.
Hmm. It's interesting that I think sometimes guilt and shame might come up for caregivers if their person dies. That did I do enough? Did I do it correctly? Was I whatever? And I think having that, you could look back and say, yes, I did.
That's a great point. Yeah, so keeping a journal, but I want to address one more thing about writing.
Sure.
There's some wonderful research that's been going on for a number of years called Writing to Heal.
Mm.
And it has to do with writing specifically about the traumatic event every day for 4 days for 20 minutes, period. Like anybody could do that, right? And you focus on the traumatic event. What does that do? It helps you integrate what's happening into your now. It helps you get some context, and detachment isn't really the right word, because you're never detached, but the emotional pain that surrounds the treatment is lessened.
Sure.
So I just want to mention that. So writing to heal.
What writing to heal? Okay.
Yep, I'm going to be teaching a course on that online this fall.
Oh,
you can hear about it on my Facebook page. But
oh, that's great.
yeah.
Okay. I'm wondering what about the listener or about the reader who wasn't in the experience, but might be adjacent to the experience.
Okay.
That, supporters that might not be living in the home, what can they do to help with this process?
I can help you with that. So it's pretty simple, actually. When you call to see how the person is doing, and they answer you, I had such and such treatment, or I'm not feeling so good today. Can you tell me more? And you shut up, if you will, and you listen, and you wait. And they will realize that you want to hear, whether it's bad news or not. You want to hear. That alone is huge.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. At Gilda's Club, this aligns so beautifully with our philosophy, because we believe strongly that telling your experience is important, being heard, feeling, and no matter how many times you need to tell it, it's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay. And if people get stuck, we help them, and often other members will help them to move beyond that and see the new horizon. So that's great. I love that. Tell me more, because that is where we sit, in the tell me more. Yeah. Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah.
So what can listeners that are out there in Facebook land and in the greater world listening to us talk about this today, what can they do to get started right away? If they're like, this is for me, I want to do this.
Well, I think the two things. One is to get a journal, and I use those kind of $1.50 things from Staples, with the spiral binding.
Yes.
Because if I get anything too pretty, I feel like I have to make it look pretty when I write, and I'm not a neat writer at all. So get something to write in, and start keeping track of what's going on, and don't make it hard or something that you'll give up after a couple of days. Did your child say something about the situation that really caught your attention? Was there a scripture you heard that really spoke to you? And the more you do that, the more that helps you pay attention to the story that's going on for you right now.
And you could, for people who are non-writers, they could do that on their computer, right? Or they could do, I love this bullet point journaling now, because you can just write the ideas. You don't have to necessarily have, yeah.
And there is an app, I've just gotten it. I don't think there's any cost, but no, there's no cost, but it's kind of nifty. It's called One Day. And you have the choice of using audio, or you can write it, or there's a couple different ways. You can save the file and send it to your computer, or you can store it there on the app. But this bullet, journaling, they've got that, and some other things. So it's very handy to capture the moments.
Oh, very cool. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Sheila, this is really wonderful, and it's so timely right now, especially in today's our culture, and we really are challenging our stories right now, right?
Yes.
And there's personal stories going on, There's communal stories going on. There's worldwide stories going on. We're rewriting our cultural racial story. So many narratives that are being looked at right now. And so this, I think, is just really poignant and important in this moment. I mean, always, but especially now. And I think of Native American communities who often will assign somebody be the story keeper for that tribe. And we've kind of lost that in our culture. And bringing this back to the forefront, I think, is really important and lovely and healing. So thank you for doing your work. Yeah.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah. So I would like to say too, we would love to offer a class, and I believe that you are agreed to that. Offer a class, at Gilda's Club as a Zoom group, and in the fall. So sometime, late August, early September, and so that'll be on our website. You can look for that at gildasclubgr.org, and our whole virtual calendar is on there. We have lots of offerings from support groups that listen to stories and tell stories and revel in that and cry with each other and hold each other's hands. And then workshops where you can exercise or meditate. So lots of offerings. And right now we have a children's camp going on. So look for Sheila's offering as a workshop for us that you can sign up for. Everything, of course, is free of charge, and we so appreciate you spending this time, Sheila, with us and sharing your wisdom and your learning with us and your story, right? You're telling us your story.
You notice I've been telling stories all through this.
Yes, that's wonderful. We're so appreciative of that. So if you want to get a hold of Sheila, you can just look up Sheila Carroll, 2 R's, 2 L's, .com, or on your Facebook page. Do you want to mention what that link is?
It's Storytelling Coach.
Oh, neat. Storytelling Coach on Facebook.
Yep.
Okay, great. So thank you again for coming all the way from Mount Pleasant, that long drive. And being with us, helping us give context to our lives and meaning and hope. Hope, it's really cool.
It's been my privilege, really.
Well, if you have any questions out there in Facebook land, let us know, and we'll be happy to get back to you. So everyone, take care, stay cool, drink lots of water. Okay, bye-bye.